Channel Firing by Thomas Hardy. Thomas Hardy was an English novelist and poet who was one of the most renowned figures in the English literary history. He was born on June 2nd, 1840, in Dorset, England, and died on January 11, 1928, at the age of 87. He was an architect by profession, but had keen interest in writing, so during his lifetime he wrote many successful stories, poems, and novels. Channel Firing was written at Maxgate, Dorchester in April 1914 and is one of his most well-known poems. It was published in the same year on May, just before the outbreak of the First World War. During the months leading up to the outbreak of the war in August 1914, the military forces of Great Britain were preparing themselves for war. So, there was a regular practice of firing by British battleships in the English Channel. The noise was so loud that it could be heard by residents of coastal countries such as Dorset, where Portland Harbour, a major naval base at the time, is situated. The speaker in this poem is a skeleton or a corpse who speaks from the grave. The poem talks about the atrocities or evils of war. The poem comprises of 9 stanzas with 4 lines each with an ABAB rhyme scheme. That night, your great guns unawares shook all our coffins as we lay. In the opening lines, one of the dead body or corpse spoke from the grave on behalf of all his dead friends. He complains about the great noise that suddenly shook their coffins while they were peacefully sleeping, and broke the chancel window squares. We thought it was Judgment Day. Now the effect of the noise was so great that it broke all the eastern side of the church window. They even thought it was Judgment Day. Now, Judgment Day here refers to the Christian belief that when Christ returns, God will pronounce his judgment on each soul. So the corpse thought it was Judgment Day. And set upright while drearisome arose the howl of wakened hounds. The mouse let fall the altar crumbs, the worms drew back into the mounds. The sudden noise in the middle of the night not only woke the corpse, but also the dogs that were already sleeping. The dogs made loud howl in fear and confusion. The mouse that were feasting or eating the leftover breadcrumbs from the church altar also ran away in fear, leaving behind breadcrumbs on the floor. The worms that were eating the corpses also ran and hid themselves in the mud. The glebe cow drooled, till God called, "No, it's gunnery practice out at sea. Just as before you went below, the world is as it used to be." The churches in the outskirts of England often kept cows to graze in the churchyard. These are called glebe cows. So here, the glebe cow started to drool. His saliva starts to run out of its mouth due to fear. Then God spoke and told the corpse that it is not Judgment Day. It's just gunnery practice out in the English Channel. From the time you left this world, people have not really changed. Hence, he says, the world is as it used to be. All nations striving strong to make red war rather mad as hatters. Every nation is trying its best to be the strongest. The savage instinct to fight still remains in men. So they fight against each other by shedding blood everywhere. God says that human beings have all gone mad or crazy. They do no more for Christ's sake than you who are helpless in such matters. Human beings no longer pay attention to the Word of God. They possess no spirituality or regard for religion. God further tells the corpse that human beings are in the same condition as the dead. They do not make use of their life, so they are no different from the dead. That this is not judgment hour, for some of them's a blessed thing. for if it were, they'd have to scour hell's floor for so much threatening. It is a blessing for some people that it is not judgment hour, for if it was, they would have to clean and scrub hell's floor for threatening the world so much, or in other words, for causing so much disturbances to the world. Ha ha, it will be warmer when I blow the trumpet, if indeed I ever do, for you are men, and rest eternal sorely need. Then God chuckles or laughs to himself at the thought that Judgment Day will be more comfortable and calmer comparing to the disturbances the military have caused at this time of the night by gunnery practice. The dead people could not have proper rest in their graves, so God declares that He will reconsider the decision of blowing the trumpet so that they can enjoy eternal rest in their graves. So down we lay again. I wonder will the world ever saner be, said one, than when He sent us under in our indifferent century. After God gave the corpses or the dead people the assurance that they are safe, they lay down in their graves once again. Then, as they were lying there, they were having a conversation between themselves, and one of the corpses spoke about the unfortunate century in which she lived when she was alive, but she doubted that people would ever change, as even in this century the people and nations are still fighting against each other. In other words, before we were sent to our indifferent centuries, people were foolish, cruel, and uncivilized, so I wonder if the people in this generation will be any wiser. Here, indifferent normally means uncaring, but it can also mean not different. So, both the previous century in which these dead people lived and the present century in which Hardy wrote the poetry are not at all different. And many a skeleton shook his head. Instead of preaching 40 years, my neighbor parson thirdly said, I wish I had stuck to pipes and beer. So many of the skeletons agreed to what has been said, so they nod their heads together in agreement. Then a man named Parson, who was a priest during his lifetime, spoke up, saying that he had wasted 40 years of his life preaching the gospel to the people who would not even listen. He expresses his regret and said that he should have enjoyed his life smoking pipes and drinking beers. Again the guns disturbed the hour, roaring their readiness to avenge, as far inland as Torrent Tower and Camelot and starlit Stonehenge. As they lay to sleep in their graves, they were disturbed once again by the sound of the guns. The guns boomed again, showing that the British army was ready to avenge. The sound of the guns disturbed places as far as Torrent Tower, Camelot, and starlit Stonehenge, which are places of historical interest. Thus, in this short poem, Hardy wants to express the evils of war and the effect it has on the society and people. War disturbs the past, the present, and the future. In short, war destroys all.